Hey guys, today I'm just going to be talking about Worlds, my first Worlds experience with Tribe, and it's going to be kind of dramatic, maybe not. I mean, there were a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs, and I just want to talk about my experience, of course, like the drama that went on, interesting things that you wouldn't normally get to know, like scrims, um, off meta things that happened at that time, as well as what went on behind the scenes, right? Not just my team, not just with Tribe, but with every other team. So where do I start? I mean, first of all, um, Tribe won their regional, right, in NA, and then they smashed NA, by the way. Like they smashed NA. They fucking smacked everyone. Um, and their manager slash coach at that time couldn't go to the event, Horizon Cup, couldn't go to Worlds. So they reached out to me because of my draft video, which I made a really long time ago. And a couple of the players saw it. They liked my perspective on the game and they reached out to me for a trial. So I tried out and it worked out. There was a little bit of a hiccup between me and the management, but like everything worked out completely fine, like all on good terms, everything. And yeah, I was into team, right? So let's talk about Horizon Cup, right? The players reached, if I am not wrong, 2 weeks early because you had to quarantine. At that point in time, it was the COVID period. So everyone has to quarantine for 2 weeks. So everyone goes there early. And this is good. And I would say good for about every team, right? You get a scrim and you get used to the jet lag. But the quarantine was pretty bad for us. I don't know why, but my team especially took the quarantine really bad because basically, I mean, quarantine, right? You can't leave your room, you can't do anything. So the only thing you could do for at least a week was just uh do nothing. Just play Wild Rift in your hotel. I mean, 5-star hotel, right? You get free food, so you can't complain. But that's not just the reason why. I think some of the players fell sick. I remember I fell sick at that point in time. I had like really bad tonsillitis, and then not only that, the scrim results that we had were abysmal. I know, when I was first like joining the team, I was so excited because I was just thinking like, okay, this is an NA team, best in NA. I from Asia have all the contacts that we need to scrim all the local teams here in Southeast Asia, because it was in Singapore. So I have all the contacts we need to scrim in SEA. And then the scrim group that I own had a lot of Chinese teams joining at that point in time. So I'm like, okay, all the China teams that came to Worlds are in my Discord. I'm going to talk to them as well. Going to set up all the good scrims, all the high level scrims, like Scrim versus RY, Scrim versus Tantor, Scrim versus DKG, Scrim versus like Sengoku, like Team Queso, Ebro, all this, like all the good SCA teams as well, like, and man, like, I think this is where I was, I would say too fresh, too new to coaching to really understand what I should be doing at that point in time. Because yes, we are excited, of course, as we should be, to scrim the best teams in the world. But me as a substitute coach, someone coming in fresh, I don't have a strong grasp on how good our team is yet. And I don't have a strong grasp on how we want to play, what is the NA meta relative to the rest of the world. Because we haven't really seen, right? We haven't seen yet, um, before that point in time, how the anime meta is like compared to the rest of the world. And the difference was that in at that point in time, it was so long ago, goddamn, like patch 2.5a, right? At that point in time, NA was the only region where they were playing a very bot-centric meta. Every other region playing full melee support, playing top side, playing for soul lanes, playing through jungle instead, or bios mostly through top side, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, and then NA was the only region that played through bot lane, and I got so much flame. I remember getting so much flame from NA players on social media. Not even that, even like casters, even the Chinese casters were flaming me like after some of the games. Like it was such a stressful point in time because people are saying like, did you not go and try out? Like, why aren't you guys playing the same thing as in NA? You know, like what is this draft? You know, and people just didn't understand what it was like um in the back rooms. You know, they don't understand like how we are like losing like every single scrim. You know, we don't know what works for us, right? We are playing our best champs and we're still losing, you know. And it's not like to defend myself because I think there were so many mistakes and so many regrets that I have in this particular tournament, right? But I just want to say like my biggest regret was definitely the start around it because it was how we started that affected our momentum, right? Imagine you come in best in NA, you believe that you actually have a chance to win worlds, right? You completely smack your region, you're thinking like, how hard can this game be, right? And you go to worlds, you scrim best teams in the world, get completely shit on, right? In quarantine, you fall sick, you continue screaming while you're sick and you're stressed. You scream now. You scream like the tier 2 teams, and you still get completely shit on. So where is your ego going to be as a player? Where is your expectation of this tournament going to be? And I can feel like a lot of players, especially for some particular players, like really lost confidence, not just in themselves, but in the team and in the expectation that they could go far in this tournament. And I think it really affected how we progressed, right? And I mean, there's no like animosity, there's no hate towards like any of it. I love all the players because even though like some of the players I won't mention who, there were like so much arguing like during the scrims and like in the review, but afterwards we're like completely fine. So it was just a in-game thing. Like outside the game, we're all chill, all friends. Like we go and eat together, go and eat ramen together nearby at Suntec City. But when it came to game, everyone is just like, oh fuck, we have scrims again. Fuck me, you know, like we're like this is too hard, and it's a combination of things that gave into that way. So I already mentioned the start, right? And let's talk about. So we're going to go through the first 2 weeks of preparation before we talk about the group stage. And the first 2 weeks of preparation, it was hell because okay, after we got over the initial jet lag and sickness, right? We're like, okay, let's scrim for real, right? I got to the place on site. I get to scrim in the same scrim room with everyone. And this is where my amateur coaching mistakes came in, right? Not in the sense where I couldn't coach them properly, but where I couldn't be flexible enough in the way I decided to coach them, right? So think about it this way. In Asia, at that point in time, my philosophy was that if you lose, it's because you're bad. If you are bad, what do? You play to improve. If you do that and you still lose, what do? You play more to improve. And that was my philosophy. And of course, it's very typical, especially even in PC, right, where they say like grinding in NA is just different, and the work style and the way they handle the stress and people that can handle this level of pressure on a daily basis it's just not the same, right? And that was something that is not like a stereotype, but there were people in the team that could, and there were people in the team that couldn't handle that level of pressure and the amount of stress that I was giving them, right? And we were screaming, I think, like 8-10 hours a day, which is like I think we screamed the most or almost the most out of every team at Worlds there, in that preparation phase, because there were teams that were like going out, they go and eat, go and get nice food. We are there on the dot, you know, what was it, like 1 p.m. scrim, right? And we do like was it a best of two or not best of two, sorry, like 2 games or 4 games, right? We do 4 games and then another 4 games and then we break and then another 4 games and then maybe another 4 games. I don't know, like it was just insane. And the thing here is that I failed to really assess how the team would perform under these kind of circumstances, right? And I sort of forced it, right? I sort of said like, okay, guys, like we are playing bad. If we are playing bad, like we have to play more. Like what? How can we play less if we are losing? And I sort of didn't understand that this kind of philosophy would negatively impact people that are just not used to it. And that's of course like the very first learning lesson that I had. And especially most important is that in your different teams that you join, you want to cater not just how you coach, but the environment that you create, right? And the environment that I created was too toxic. It was too stressful. It was not one where you could just be like, hey, after a game, like I could just like a player could just go down and play like, hey, I think you could have done this better. And everyone would be, oh yeah, I agree. It was not like that. It was like, hey, I think you could have done this better. Dude, why are you telling me this? Like you play like shit also. Like it was that level of stress, right? Because everyone is on edge because we are losing like literally, 80% of our scrims playing against teams that are not even at Worlds, playing against like the tier 2 SEA teams, getting completely smacked. And we played, people are gonna say like, why didn't you guys play the NA style? We played the NA style. It's not that we didn't try. Like we tried. Like we try playing true bot side, we play like full winning 2v2. Like it is just different because the teams in NA are just, they don't have hands, compared to like the other teams in the world. When you are playing a very volatile 2v2 in a bot lane matchup against players that are even in skill or maybe even better, it's a 50-50, like are you really going to bet your whole game that you win this bot lane 2v2 in the first 3 levels? Or what if the enemy team decides to lane swap? That was something that a lot of the SEA teams did to us, which made the NA players realize, because I told them, I said like, hey, this is your NA meta, I don't support it, because from SEA we don't play this shit, but if you want to try, you can try, and you try it and you let me know how it goes, right? So we try, we got completely shit on because you play shit like Lucian Nami, you go bot lane, enemy team is playing some losing 2v2, okay, it looks good, they lane swap, right? You swap to that lane, they swap to the other lane, and then you just swap, and then you have like, you go to first objective, you're up like 500 gold, you lose one team fight because your champs are only good at skirmishing, maybe slightly worse at an outright team fight in a 5v5, and then you just lose the game after you lose the one team fight. Even if you win and you snowball, you scale into late game with only like a few thousand gold lead, your team composition is not built strong enough to sustain into the mid to late game. Scaling well into, I don't know what was meta at the time, maybe like a Ziggs, you just lose. So we definitely tried it, right? And the results were, it was just not good. And in hindsight, I think it would have been fine to play it into the teams that were not so, let's just say they were not good at understanding how to counter this. And those teams would be like SBTC, like in our group, right? SBTC, TSM. I think these were 2 teams that we could have played a bot-centric meta or team composition into, right? But that's thinking about us being like versatile, being very good at understanding our flexibility. But when you are losing 80-90% of scrims, there is no flexibility, right? You're thinking about what can I play to not lose. You're just thinking about what can I play to not lose. Not to win. What can I play to not lose, right? And you just have to understand we came in with two disadvantages, right? One is with the jet lag, stress, whatever, okay, sick. And the second thing is my whole team basically played on iPad, right? They are all Vainglory players. They all played on iPad, and when we came to Singapore, they could only play on phone because I don't know. It was just not mentioned that you could only play on phone like in NA. So they made it here, right? And their mechanics are nerfed because their screen was like this big, right? And now it's like this small. So it went so much tinier and so much different for them. So that's why I mentioned like the NA style that they are used to is just harder because the style that they played in NA relied so much on mechanically outplaying the opponent. But when you're just not used to the setup, you're playing on a different device, which is 10 times tinier. Like, how are you going to reach that level of mechanical skill? It's hard. So there's that, right? And the thing is that, again, my team is mostly Vainglory players. They have very little League PC experience. And so it just comes to certain things like even like macro, right? We talk about how we want to play like a 1-2-2 or we want to play a 1-1-3. I was like these kind of modern macro settings I was already trying to teach um at Worlds. At this point in time, it's so long ago, but we were already trying to get the understanding of how we should operate in a 3-1-1, in a 1-2-2. But because of the environment and because of how we are just disadvantaged, it's hard for us to, I would say, breach that um, learning curve, right? To really go through it. And I think this is one quote that I saw from like a hate comment that really stuck with me is that they said like Glaciers really took this team and made it a worse Asian team. And I thought about it for a second and I just thought like, yeah, I mean, the theories and the macro that I was teaching them is completely based off the modern Baldrift meta at that point in time, right? Which was to play a very side lane oriented, very mid into side, 1-2-2, early to mid game. And if you are losing on mid, you go on from side with a 1-1-3. But it was hard for us to be, I would say, very consistent in these things because we're just not used to it, right? There are so many factors that we have to accommodate for. And like inside the game, at that point in time, as players that are just coming in and new to the Southeast Asian meta. So yeah, we struggle a lot with both the mechanics and the macro side of things. And I think it was just really difficult, especially because of the way that I personally regret the most is the environment that I created within the team. Because it's not as if every day was productive, right? Like out of all the days we scrimmed, I think there were only like 2 productive days. I even still have on my old phone like a recording of us losing to Flash Wolves in like 5 minutes. Like I'm not even joking. We scrimmed them, um, and we play like the first like 5 minutes, right? Bot lane dies, top lane dies, mid lane is like I think he gets ganked, starting gets ganked and he dies, and we just FF. Like that's how majority of our scrims went. I'm not even joking. It's like we play like the first 5 minutes, we're down, and then the comms are like, guys, should we go next? Like, why are we even playing? You know. So what is there to learn there, right? And every day that I force the team to scrim more and apply more pressure to improve, the performance just gets lower. And the one day that we did well in scrims was the day right before we played against TSM. And that was the day where we played amazing in scrims. We played the Vi Renekton Corky. I think that was our like, cause it's funny because it's pretty similar to what is the modern meta. We play like the just if I'm not wrong, it was yeah, we just play like this strong side lane with Chuck as the main carry, right? With his Renekton, we have T Tigers on Vibe, very good side lane setup champion, and Max Green on Rakan, which is one of his signature picks at that point in time. And then we have someone that is really good at holding mid and side lane, or mid or side lane for on either old school or starting. Corky was our go-to at that point in time. And then like yeah, so we just played these champs and we operated really well on that day. So we set up everything, we played the 3-on-1 well, and we followed the game plan exactly how we were supposed to, and we won like 60-70% of the scrims against the same people that we were losing like 80% of the time. So that was where we were like, okay, now we have a chance, we can win. And that's where we go in the group stage, right? And we play against TSM. The first game, they draft some fucking Pantheon top lane with Lee Sin. Terrible team composition on their part. No idea what they are picking. Like no front line, completely coin flipping early game with yeah, just coin flip. So we shit on them the first game. And we were so confident that we were gonna just 2-0 them. We're like, oh, why were we so stressed? Right? Like, Worlds is easy, like TSM, like who are these noobs, Because you can see like we beat them in 40 minutes, right? So fast, completely just smack them. And then afterwards, I don't know what happened. Like we went into the second game, with at that point in time, I think we had a better draft for what we wanted. We basically got all the picks that we wanted, right? If you are looking at our champs, right, Darius signature, Vi signature, Ziggs signature, Lucian signature, Braum. I mean, it is what it is, Braum, right? I mean, so yeah, we lost that game. We basically threw that game. We were winning and we were supposed to win, and we threw, right? And this was where like there was like a turning point or like a edge in my head that I just fell off because I thought about so many things and about like why we are losing, how we lost, what is wrong, what is the problem. And this was where I think this was like the biggest takeaway from me from Worlds, besides the understanding of accommodating to the players in creating an environment, but how I handled the stress as a coach. And you might think like, oh, what stress is there? You are just doing draft, just talking about what mistakes you made. But as someone that is very emotionally invested in the game and in the players and in the team in the tournament, it was extremely stressful to see us lose in that way when I felt like I won the draft, right? We are already 1-0. All you guys have to do is just play properly, right? And it was this moment where after we lose, I just mental boomed. I just completely mental boomed. And it was just something that should not have happened because as a coach, you need to be professional. You need to keep your mental strong. And you will see like it's not uncommon, right? You look at if I'm not wrong, LPL has these like documentary type things where they document teams right throughout their journey in the LPL, and you even see like the winning like EDG won Worlds that year, and they have their documentary. The coaches are just completely losing it in the background. They're like full scolding every single player, like what the fuck are you guys doing? Like how the fuck can you guys play like this? This dog shit. If you play like this, like we just go home now. Like that's how invested some of these people are. And for me, I just had that moment, and it was like just the worst point in time for me to have that moment because we just basically threw the game, right? And I am just in a state where I don't know what to do because I felt like I gave you guys the best draft we could possibly ask for, and we are just trolling. So how can I do any better? What can I do for you? You know, rather than thinking about, okay, we made this mistake here. How can we adapt to the next game? What can I tell the players to make them think that we can still win this game? Because like this was a particularly important learning point for me, is that your feelings as a coach do not matter as much as the players, right? Because you need the players to be in a good condition. It doesn't matter how well your draft is. Doesn't matter if you are fucking coma and you draft like the best draft, you're the best coach in the world. But if your players cannot perform to their potential, there is no point, right? And the best coach will always be someone to help their players reach their potential. And if their mental is not good enough, the best coach will find a way to think about how can I put them back in a safe mental space where they can be confident in the fact that they are going to win this game, right, or this series. And I just did not do that because it was just the inexperience. It was just the amateur level of coaching that I was used to at that point in time, right? And it was just the lack of understanding on the interpersonal relationships between a coach and a player, and what are the priorities there in between each other. So that was like the biggest learning point, right? As you can see, like I mental boomed. The third game, the draft was terrible. I mean, we had the 4 core champions that we wanted, right? The Vi, Vrenekton, Corki Rakan, which is really good, but we definitely should not have Oriana. That is one thing. It would be so much better if we had Ziggs instead, and or like if we had the Lucian, right? We knew like people at that point in time were saying like, oh, Javan Galio so broken, but it's not. It's really not. Like Javan Galio is really not OP. It was just that the game at that point in time was in such an infant state that people couldn't, like, the normal players couldn't understand what is good and what is not. Like the TSM team composition on paper at that point in time looks so OP to like a normal player from like League PC or like from any other game. It's just that we failed to execute our game plan. And a lot of it is how during the draft I was too out of it to propose like a proper plan itself, and I failed to give the players the words of confidence or encouragement or an idea of the game plan that they needed to follow, right? Because I was so mad. I was thinking like, okay guys, like how the fuck can we play like this? You know, come on. We already won. We won that draft. We won the game. You guys just need to play properly here. Like this is just a mistake that we made. You guys need to step it up. We can do it. Like I was just flaming them. You know, I was just saying like, what, like, yeah, like how can we play like this? So we lost, and the moment we lost that TSM series, the whole team just stopped operating on a functional level. Everyone just mental boomed, right? I would say. So we have a break, right? We have no game on this day. And I remember we just completely broke down, right? And it wasn't that bad until the game versus DKG, right? The team that won the tournament. And I just want to give some context on how good DKG was at this tournament, because it was hilarious. Now that you are looking back at it, right? It was super funny about how they completely went behind every single team, apart from Thundertalk, right? Uh, think about it this way, okay? This team was so good, they were playing Lucian support and completely stomping like the teams at Worlds. And how I know that is because they played Lucian support against us, and you might think like, oh, it's just you guys is bad. No, they play Lucian support against other teams, so much so that some of the teams actually, like, I talked to some of the other teams and they actually believe that Lucian support was not bad, right? Because that's how much of a skill level difference there was. Like, they just play whatever the fuck they want. They were playing Aurelion Sol, Misfortune, like season 0 champions, even when they were like Omega nerfed and completely useless, they were just playing them and just completely stomping everyone. And the funny thing is that I heard that their players were just like, oh, they didn't think they could even do well at this tournament, right? Because they basically came from the second tier league in China, and they felt like they shouldn't. They were just lucky to be there. They didn't even. They thought like maybe we get our groups. That is like their goal. And when they came and they started screaming everyone, they realized like, oh wait, this is free. You know, like how can we not win? And TT, which was supposed to be OMG if I'm not wrong, or oh no, it was Thunder Talk, but um half of their players couldn't make it, so they had to like rent players from other teams. So like it was so free for them, you know, like the only competition is just a half proper like China team. Everyone else they are stomping, like they don't need to give a shit, you know. In scrims they play whatever they want, right? They just beat everyone in completely stomping every scrim, you know. They're taking it chill, right? And there was just a skill gap, right? They just understood the game at a fundamentally higher level than everyone else at that point in time, right? There were two things that were revolutionary about how DKG played the game. The very first one was, I have to mention their jungler, Weiba, which is still playing pro to this day and still a really insane star player, right? He's just talented. How he revolutionized the jungle meta. Because at that point in time, people viewed Borif as, okay, it's a very fast-paced game. So you play the fast-paced junglers that can impact the map. And Huiba was that one jungler that was like, okay, you play your Vi, you play your Lee Sin, I'm gonna play Jax, I'm gonna play Graves, you know, gonna play Rengar, gonna play all these carry junglers, and I'm gonna farm. You know, I'm just gonna farm and farm and farm, and I'm gonna be taking up CS like minions in lane. I'm gonna be playing strong side permanently with my team, and I'm gonna take every single wave. I'm gonna be farming. So how you how I know this was revolutionary was because I mean my own experience, and even when we screamed them, and then T Tigers was like, how the hell is this guy ganking the same time as me, but he is like 2 levels above me? It does not make any sense. And we watched the game together, we rewatched, and we think about his pathing, right? There were, and this is where it leads to the second thing that was like really revolutionary about their gameplay. They didn't play a very traditional style, and the traditional style at that point in time is to play like a 1-2-2, right? You have a very clear weak side and strong side. You go from mid into the strong side, right? Or you play a 1-1-3 and you break the side lane if you are losing on mid. But the way they play it is a very spread out. They play a 2-1-2 setup where they can defend on both side lanes, right? And decide like, okay, if you are attacking me on, let's just say, top lane, I'll just give up, right? We allocate the players from top to either clear the wave so you cannot take the tower, or we move them towards the opposite side of the map so that we can just play more reactive, right? And you will see this in the champions that they picked, right? They were the team that played Garen support, they played Mundo support, they play all these high base stat champions. They are incredibly hard to kill, and then they just play this 2-1-2 style. So that was what made it completely different, right? And this style supported Huiba's farming efficiency a lot, right? Because they are just stalling the game. You know, like every other team, they're just playing 2-1, 1-1-3, accelerating the game. But you reach this wall where you're like, okay, let's fight them. You go and try to dive them on this side lane. The Garen support and Diana mid lane clear the whole wave. They take out like 2 people with them, right? You are 2 for 2, sure, but you can't take the tower. On the opposite side, it's 2v1 or 3v1. So they take your tower, and meanwhile, Weiba is just farming every single jungle camp on that side. You're just thinking like, okay, so what are we supposed to do? You know, we tried to accelerate, it backfired, and now the enemy team is getting ahead instead. And then they're just gonna farm the whole game, and they eventually just outscale you, right? Or Huiba just goes 1v9 on Jax or Graves or whatever champion. So these two things were macro decisions and ideas and philosophies in gameplay that were unique to them at that point in time, because every other team in Wild Rift hadn't like made the discovery of these strategies yet, right? So if we couldn't even discover this strategy yet, how could we think of a way to counter it, right? We were just learning about it while scrimming them. How can we in 1 week plus think about a way to completely counter it when we don't know all of the parameters, all of the small nuances in that strategy? And you can see in our game against them, right? So one of the ways that we thought we could counter it is that we were going to cheese them, right? How about we cheese their strategy is a lot around their jungler. How about we cheese their jungler and then we make it so that they are operating on a timer instead. Not a timer, but like their timer is extended, right? Because usually they have a timer for when Huiba goes infinite. So if we cheese him, he's gonna add maybe an extra like 5 minutes, right? So we try to cheese him. We ban like 5 junglers. He just plays Rengar into 3 ADCs, so we lose because we didn't know that he played Rengar. So yeah, that was it. And second game, we just picked a more normal team composition and we got stomped faster, funny enough. But yeah, this match itself completely mental boomed our team because our position was like, okay, we know we are not that good. We know we kind of suck, but like, how are we this bad? We are losing in 11 minutes. You know, like, it's not funny that we're getting stomped so hard. So it really crushed like the confidence, not just in me, but in all of the players, in our potential, in our expectations, in our level of play. And I don't know why so many people were making fun of this. I think this was one thing that really irked me. People were making fun of the no flash Braum, but like, why is no flash Braum bad? You know, you think about it. And I even when I first brought up the idea to Max Green and told him like, hey, maybe you just don't take flash on Braum, because we went through the scrim, right? I counted the amount of times he used flash in that one game, or like in those few games, right? So per game, how many flashes he used, and it was like maximum 3. You know, because when you're playing Braum, what are you flashing on? What are you flashing away from? You know, it's so rare that you find yourself in a position to use your flash aggressively, especially if you're not looking for those angles, or especially if that's not your job to engage, right? You see, you do it with Vi, right? And I know you could use flash aggressively in lane itself, but there were so many cases in the scrim games where it was very rare that you would find these kind of engages with Lucian Braum, because the lane is so short in Wild Rift. Like, they have to play like an idiot for you to find that kind of engage. And in the first place, having 2 summoner spells in the 2v2 would help you way more to, you know, fight it out. So I don't know, people were just memeing it like, oh, this Braum don't take flash, haha, lol, no flash. And it was just something that really irked me, because people didn't bother to try and understand the science behind it, because it made sense. Like, if your job is just to stand in the front and just tank everything, anyway, you are not going to engage at all, then why take the flash? You know, you already have your W, you already have your second skill, your jump. And when we went into the games to look at how impactful the flashes were, or when he used the flashes, it was like, it'd be better if you have another summer spell, you know? It would be better if you just ran like Heal Exhaust, you run Healing Knight, right? So, I mean, that was like the reasoning behind the no flash Braum. And it was just something that just made me, yeah, just made me mad till this day. Because they were flaming him so much for not taking flash. And it was not his fault. It was something that I proposed and had a very understandable reason behind it. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on. We lost to DKG, and I just want to say, when we lost to DKG, everyone was down AF, and I remember going back into the hotel, sitting down with the team, and let me just say, every single day after we lost to TSM, we had a talk in the scrim room every day, right? I would have to sit with the team, and I would just be like, guys, do we want to win? Do we? What do we want to do here? Right? I remember saying this very specifically. I say, if we don't care about how we are going to end up, what is our score is going to be like, then let's just stop scrimming. You know, we are scrimming 8-10 hours a day for what? Right? If we don't want to win, or like, not don't want to win, but if we don't have the heart to put into this, right, then let's just cut down on the scrims, or let's just not scrim. You know, preserve our mental game rather than pushing through it for diminishing returns. And this is another mistake, right? Is that I fail to understand the personalities of the players, because they were very introverted players. Maybe except Chuck. Right? I think Chuck is the most extroverted person on the team, but they were very introverted in terms of voicing their opinion, right? And how they could go about to improve, or the problems that the team had. It was very hard, especially in the environment that we were in, to say that without thinking that, oh, I want to hurt this person's feelings. We are all friends. I don't want to do that. And yeah, that was it was something that I should be talking to each of the players individually about, rather than as a team. I should just be saying like, hey, can I talk to you for a moment? Let me speak with you, right? I'll talk with the rest of the team later on. So I should have just, like, retrospectively, right, hindsight, I should have spoken to each of the team individually. I mean, I did, but spoken to them individually, face to face, and talked about how they want to move forward, because I did speak to them individually, but I think the things that I talked about were too focused on the present, right? I talked about, hey, what is the problem that we have? What do you think we can do better? I should be talking like, what do you think is best for you? What do you think is best for you to play better? What do you think is best for you to feel less stress? What do you think is best for you as a player um in this game? And focusing rather on the player's needs rather than their idea of how they can solve the solution. Because I think the issue at that point in time was, I mean, of course, we weren't performing well individually, but it was about the confidence and the mental space, or rather the environment, right? And it is something that I've mentioned many times already, but there were definitely a lot of things that I could have done to make the players feel more comfortable in the situation that we were in. And rather than asking them how they could fix, or what they would do to fix our spot, right? I should have asked them what they would do to make themselves feel better, what they would do to make themselves feel like they are playing well, right? Because everyone obviously felt like they are not playing well. So yeah. And anyway, we had multiple of those talks, at least like 4 times, 3 times. And then we go to the SBTC match. We get stormed the first game. The second game, we somehow beat them, right? And I got so much flame for this one. I just remember, like, this Riven thing. Listen, okay. At this point in time, I got so much flame from like the Western media, Western people, or Western players on social media, because they're like, I said, I think Riven is not that OP, right? And people were just flaming me, they're thinking like, this champ is so broken. How can you say it's not OP? You know, like Riven is so fucking OP. Like how dare you, you know, say that Riven is not OP? And I agree, yes, she was overtuned, but she is not broken, you know. Riven has a very particular play style, very coin flippy play style, very clear weaknesses, right? You think about how Riven wants to play. Yes, she can team fight, but what is the requirement for you to team fight? You know, you're thinking about, oh, Riven can flash engage in Wild Rift, you know, like she's so broken, she can so mobile, right, do so much damage, so tanky at the same time. But what counters Riven? You know, you think in terms of mobility, right? She's up there, but heavily countered by CC, you know, and completely outranged also. So how would you go about countering Riven? You play a front to back, right, with heavy CC that does not allow her to these kind of like crazy 1v5 jump, like the shy mechanical outplay, you know. You build a team comp around Riven. Because I view Riven as very face up champion, right? You pick Riven, it's obvious what this champion can do and what this champion provides. So I would say like against SBTC, right? You're looking at the champions that we have in this third game, right? How is Riven supposed to play a team fight against Braum, Vi, and Varus? Even Darius, like, how do you play it? What the fuck? You jump in, you get Braum passive, stun, Varus ulti, Vi ulti, right? You get 5 stacked by Darius, one shot. How do you play? Like, what are you supposed to do? So in theory, it was good. I think I remember this third game. We coin flip a crap fight for no reason and we lose because how do you beat 3 early game against range support and a better skirmishing jungler, which is Riven. So it was just a bad decision and we coin flipped the whole game at the crab. And after we lost that crab fight, they snowballed, they won the first dragon, and after that we just kept losing and losing. So it was definitely bad at this point in time. I think we just dropped the ball. We could have won them. I think we could have made it out of groups for sure. Like this was definitely not an easy group, right, with KT and DKG. But I think SBTC and TSM were easily beatable. And I just want to say this group draw was possibly the worst group draw that we could have gotten, because if you look at the opposite side, not to diss anyone on those teams, right? I'm friends with people from those teams, you know, Sengoku, Team Queso, Ebro, but that was so free, so fucking free. We beat all of these 3 teams in scrims, and it was like not even close. We completely smacked them, and I know some people on Team Queso might have something to say about that, but regardless of how we remember the scrim results, I would argue that it would be infinitely easier to play against Ebro, Team Queso, and Sengoku compared to TSM, SBTC. Let's let's just say that, okay? And I know anyone would agree with me. So anyway, got smacked by SBTC. Um, obviously not surprising we lose to KT, right? With our morale in the dumpster and with how much better they are individually and as a team. I think KT at that point in time were the best SEA team. So it was all kind of obvious that we were gonna lose. Yeah. And that was like the end of our Worlds run. It was the most disappointing and of course the one with most regrets, because had I started the whole tournament with a better way to set the stage and environment for the players for a more like conducive, more positive sort of methodology of approaching things, things might have turned out very different, right? Had I understood how to interact with the players better to fit their personalities, to fit their approaches in game and outside of game, I would have been able to learn um how to approach them in difficult situations to avoid them feeling more stress, right? And had I not mental boomed in the TSM game, maybe if we beat TSM and even if we lose to DKG, we would feel like, okay, our goal here is to just get out of groups, right? We can beat SPTC. We already beat TSM. We just need to win one more game. And that sort of positive mindset can go far, really far, right? So it was just about all these small decisions that I regret so much about, because there were so many things that I could have done as a coach, right? I won't say I didn't try my best. I definitely tried my best at that point in time, but at that point in time, I was just a really inexperienced head coach. I would say I had the I had the technology, right? I had the strategy, I had the coaching methodology, I had the ideas. I knew how to tell people what they were doing wrong. I knew um how to analyze, I knew how to coach, but I didn't know how to be a head coach at that point in time. And I think this world's experience really opened my eyes, and it really made me learn a lot of things that I still value and still use to this day. And because these are all experiences that you can't, like, I can be telling you, oh, I should have done this and this is what you should do. But you won't know the impact of it until you are actually there, until you actually experience what it's like to make such a mistake, for you to mental boom on stage as a coach, and for you to make these kind of interpersonal decisions that affect your whole team or affect the relationships that you have in the team as players and as a coach. And yeah, these are just things that I reflect on, and I understand that it was my mistake, and I'm fine with sharing about it because I've shared this to many players that I've talked to in the past that were on my team, talked about my mistakes, what I learned, and how I was a good coach, but not a good head coach at that point in time. And I think the person that the team needed was definitely someone to bring the team together, right? And regardless of strategy, it would have been so much better, right? Because, and this is just something related to the team itself. The person that was missing from their team was their manager, which is Hot Sauce, which was sort of like a father figure to them. And when they were missing him to really pull the strings and tighten the bonds within the players, I really failed to step up to the plate because I didn't know what I was missing, right? I just didn't have the experience, too amateur at that point. So yeah, that was my recount of worlds, my first worlds. Definitely disastrous, but I made a lot of good friends there. Still friends with all of the tribe players, right? I even went to Korea with Max Green and Old School. Like I think the next year. I mean, not next year, but like the year after this Worlds, I went to Korea with them. Um, Travel together for fun, right? And for them to play the game as well, you know. And close to starting, I wish T Tigers and Chuck like the best in everything that they are doing now, like in their real life, right? Because they retired. So it was an amazing experience without a doubt. There were many learning experiences, but there were just also a lot of regrets on how it could have been, right? And one of the things that really stuck out to me and the players, which I'm just remembering now, was after we lost, we talked with Ebro, right? He led them team. They got completely shit on, by the way. Like they won lesser games than us, you know. And in most of their games, they were getting stomped, completely stomped. But we went to their room and they were just like they were laughing, you know. I mean, obviously you don't wanna. It's not good look for professionalism, right? But I don't mean it in that way. But like they were laughing at their loss. They were trying to think positive, right? We ask them like, oh, how are you guys not angry? And they say like, yeah, of course we are mad, of course we want to play better, but we took this as a positive experience and we are going to go back to our region and we're going to do better there. Now we have this experience, we are going to go back and we are going to beat everyone because we have this experience, rather than mulling over the fact that we couldn't do as well as we wanted to. So when us in Tribe saw that, we realized like, oh, maybe if we had this approach, we would do so much better. And that was definitely the case because, yeah, a lot of the problems we had were related to stress, um, the toxic environment, our mental fortitude, how we approach our mistakes, and of course, I mean, not to mention the mechanical and strategic differences between the teams. But a lot of these could have been overcome for us to at least get out of groups, for sure. So yeah, I think that's it. That was just the complete recount of Worlds itself. I mean, of course, DKG went on to win this Horizon Cup. Not surprising. And yeah, it was really sad. But yeah, I'll be talking about Game Lot next. So stay tuned for that. Thanks.